Hey guys, I'm Brittany,
I'm Maria.
and this is the Be More podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
We've been on a mini hiatus.
Yes, because you celebrated your anniversary, so happy anniversary again.
Think
It was good though, you're saying, before we
no,
started
we had
recording.
lots of fun. It was really
Hmm.
nice. We went away to the mountains. We went on a rail explorers thing,
Yeah,
and Dan and I had this. We actually never even found out the answer to this question. So there's this company called Rail Explorers that has essentially like pedal bikes, and
yes.
you ride. I would guess are like what are abandoned railroad tracks
Yeah, I've seen
um,
those online.
in different states in the US. And we were talking about it while we were on the thing. Like, how does that, who owns railroad tracks? Because,
Oh, I don't know,
so
man.
here was my, like, I don't think we ever came to a final, like, what we thought the situation was. But if you think about, like, the states don't have right to railroad tracks, like, the companies own the railroad
It's
tracks.
the companies. Yeah.
But when the tracks go interstate, do they pay every state for who
Oh,
like that they go through? And then do they have to pay a single down payment to own that land, or do they constantly have to pay and then also pay taxes? And then
oh,
we got to this whole conversation about monopoly and like the railroad tracks.
I would have to assume that you just pay. Like it doesn't matter that you bought like with proper taxes, probably like that. You
And
just
then we
pay.
were trying to figure out how this works with their system because they don't own the entire length of the track, right? They just take up a couple of miles worth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A girl,
So
I don't know. Ask
I
an
know, but it's
engineer.
just so interesting. Anybody out there who's a train
I don't know something.
anything, and that's like a job that someone would be like, I work in the train industry. Like, what is that like?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a lot of work. Um,
Hmm.
Definitely like aerobic exercise for the
Oh,
legs.
okay.
Um,
Got your
but it was
exercise, yeah.
beautiful. We went to eat at these yummy restaurants and we hung out in this little cabin. So yeah, that's what we did. What did you do over the last couple weeks?
Or decorated for Christmas. Had a existential crisis for a week.
Over Christmas or a separate issue?
No, over it's just seasonal. It
Oh,
hit. But like I anticipated it, so like thankfully like I meal prepped, I like cleaned my place, like so I just vegged out for a week.
that's me rearranging everything was me
Yeah.
going through my version of that process. Understood.
Yeah, I like took like a couple days off from work. I was like, I can't do
Oh,
this. Like, so
so
I was
proud of
like,
you.
yeah, thank you. And perfect timing. I guess my body knows I have to get through October 15th, which is my last deadline of the year, and then it's
Yeah.
just like take a few days off for your mental health. Um, but no, I anticipated, which is progress in itself every year, I feel like. So,
Knowing how to be able to track what
hmm
you need when you know you're going through cyclical events
hmm
of
yeah, of depression.
distress and distress and depression. Yes.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, I think that's it. Just depression and Christmas.
What a combination.
What a great combination. This is what you guys have to look
I have
forward
to
to when you
tell
get
you though,
older, I guess.
I am right there with you because I had a whole, I guess I can
Hmm.
find a way to segue this. Yesterday, a huge chunk of yesterday, I was dealing with just like all I saw. I came home from rehearsal and I literally punched the crap. We got a bag of cat food, like a new, you got to make do with what you have. We order delivery, like cat food and
Yeah.
stuff that we need for our cats. And
Yeah.
we got this giant bag of cat food and I fought it all the way up the stairs because that, you know me, I'm carrying 1,000 things in my hand, trying to carry this
Hmm.
giant box of like 40 pounds of cat food.
Yeah.
And I get upstairs and I think all of my frustration from the whole week just like iceberged in that moment. And I just opened the box and just started punching the shit out of the cat food for a solid 30 seconds. And then I felt way better afterwards. And I sat down, I was sitting on the couch and I was like, I didn't feel good. And I was like tired, but I felt like really angry. And Dan was like, what's wrong? And he's like, you grumpy? And I was like, I don't even know what I am. I'm like whatever is past grumpy, but also combined with exhaustion.
Yeah.
But and then I like, went past it. It just is. I think I was like, and part of me was like, maybe I should take up boxing just so I can get out all my
Yeah. Your
frustration.
frustrations.
Why'd you get so
Why did I
blurry?
get blurry?
That
Sorry.
was weird.
No, because I moved, I guess, and my cameras, I don't know, whatever.
Oh,
Anyways, sorry about that.
anyways, but yeah, I can relate to that. You have to just like know. It's so hard
Listen to your
to,
body, I guess.
yeah, it's so hard to be able to like be able to deal
With
with
life.
things. And it was funny because in that moment, I didn't realize how like
Hmm.
it's been a week. I had someone try to not not paying attention at all when they were driving, literally run me off the road
My God.
like two
People.
nights beforehand. And
Great.
like I couldn't even I don't know how I didn't get in a car accident. Like I like thank God when you fall into like instinctive, like and everybody wants to be like, oh, dancers, like you guys have great self-awareness. Like, thank God that I do because I have that awareness over my car too. But I
Hmm.
was like on the not
Barrier.
road.
Like
Like I
the
was not
yeah.
on the road. No, well, on the
Yeah.
other side.
Oh, okay, okay.
Like, and there was another lane merging. Well, I don't know how
That's the
I don't know how,
literally uh, yeah, y-
but this
my
guy didn't even,
anxiety is
yeah,
like what is
this
my
guy, and I saw
self-awareness?
it. It was like one of those things where you see it happening in slow motion.
Me too,
And this
yeah.
guy, like,
That's what
I
happens.
am not a person who lays into my horn, and he didn't even, he had no idea. He didn't have
Register
a blinker
anything.
on. And he literally was right next to me doing, like, I could see you as you're driving, and I'm
It's the
literally like,
worst.
what? So I think I just had, from that and other stupid things that happened this week, I think I just had so much frustration built into my body. And it's funny how you don't realize going back to we've talked about this in a previous episode, like the real cycle of emotion, that things really do get stuck in there. And then
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, I got all this anger, I'm just gonna punch this cat food. And I felt really better afterwards. So
Yeah, I met up with friends yesterday. Um, and we were just imparting words of wisdom from therapy,
mm,
from like our therapy sessions, which is a
it's gonna
good
turn
thing.
into a poetry reading right now. Snaps.
Yeah, it just snaps everywhere. Um, but and a few of them haven't gone to therapy or like haven't experienced that yet in like or like haven't found the right therapist, let's just say, right? Like and like I have and a couple of like my other friends have too. So it's just like no, you need the right therapist or like no, like you need to go through XYZ because you have to things are stuck. Like you like journaling is like the easiest thing, I guess, to like just sit there and just write for 30 seconds. But like some people don't do it with an intention and they just like it doesn't help me. I'm like, because you're not doing it correctly, because XYZ, because things get stuck. So,
Things get stuck.
or like punching, cat food or decorating for Christmas and laying on
Yeah,
the
whatever you
couch.
gotta do
Like,
to complete
what are
your
you gonna do?
cycle. Jesus Lord Almighty. Thinking of things
Yeah.
that make me want to punch cat food. So, on our last episode, we started having, I don't know if it was our last episode or the episode before that. The lines are blurry. We talked a little bit about the bullshit that we were noticing around the country about
Voting.
what's going on with voting. And
Hmm.
I listened to, and this interview happened in, I think, 2020.
When Stacey
So we're
Abrams
going,
probably like flipped Georgia.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, no, before that.
Oh, before that.
Like right
Yeah, I
before that
can't even
happened. It
remember.
was around that
Okay, got
time
it,
because
got
she got interviewed about all the bullshit that had happened with her previously and how,
it. Hmm.
like how she was fucked over.
Hmm.
Not before she actually was able to, do all the stuff that she's doing now.
Yeah.
But she gave me a super education on voter suppression
Hmm.
and things that I feel like we know exists, but it's totally different when someone literally pulls back all the layers and is like, but look at it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
One of
Hmm.
those things, so, and her perspectives that she took on this stuff, I was mind boggled. So, first, let's just start with some definitions because the biggest thing that she talked about that I was just like all about was she defined voter suppression. So, this episode is going to be a very much I'm going to impart information onto
Hmm.
people, and Maria and I are going to discuss it. Um,
And by the time this comes out, it is election day.
yeah,
I will actually, I'm actually gonna just upload this on like midnight on the 8th instead of like our 6 p.m. because it'll be it'll be after.
perfect. So,
So this episode, when you're hearing this, will be earlier, so you guys can get educated and go vote today. So
yeah, and
please go vote today.
understand what really goes on in the foundations of the democracy of this country around voting and elections.
Yes, voting
So,
is very important.
yes, so voter suppression is any attempt to stop you from voting. Like that is the
Yes, just
most simple way to,
yep.
but it becomes so convoluted so quickly because of the way that it happens and the way that it functions in our country. So In the history of the United States, it is something that has mostly been done by the Republican Party because very often they are on the wrong side of history and they're trying to stop the progression of this country. Period.
Lord have
There's a little
mercy.
bit of my own opinion in there, but also a little bit of fact. Um,
Hmm.
Specifically, voter oppression targets people of color and students because if you're looking at the Republican Party, those are the people that you don't want to vote because they're most likely going to vote Democratic.
Yes, the younger people and the younger educated people and the people of color, correct? Yes.
The people who are
Typically.
awake, the people who
Yeah.
are awake, and the people who have to deal with the negative consequence of what happens when
And
people of
even
power choose to
yeah. And even
suppress them.
um just professional workers that are typically higher educated. Like if it's like a 9 to 5, like it used
Oh,
to be like a 9 to 5.
we're
Yeah.
gonna get
Okay.
into all of
Okay.
that fun stuff
Okay.
too, because that is its
I'm
own,
getting
that
ahead of
stands
you.
out in a different place of how
Yeah.
voter suppression, again, it's a thing that we know and we see all the time, but no one does anything about. So
Hmm.
how we know what voter suppression is, we know how it's happened, we know who it targets, but what does it look like? Like how is it actually done? Or what does it look like in the process of how people vote? So voter suppression comes to light and is enacted by any political person somehow doing something to make it hard for someone to register for vote, hard
Hmm.
for someone to be able to actually cast their ballot and like do the act of voting, or hard for their ballot to actually count. Um, and the whole, it's so funny, the all of the history of Americans feeling like, well, my vote doesn't mean anything doesn't go without standing because in our country it is 100% possible for politicians to purge votes based on whatever is most comfortable for them to say this makes you not qualify as somebody who can vote in this state.
Hmm. Right.
Which leads me to this bullshit and how ass backwards this concept is. So federally in our nation, we talk about how everyone has the right to vote, right? Like it's a thing that we just blatantly say. But
Hmm.
here's the real, political science behind this that people really need to understand. And it's something that I knew this was true, but when you look at
When
it
you look at it, I
as
know exactly.
truth,
I feel like I know where you're
especially
going.
because we are, as people who are in New Jersey,
Hmm.
the way that we deal with this is different than a lot of the way the other states do. But when you understand this as fact and then you start looking about the shit that's happening across the states, you go, holy shit.
Yeah.
Um,
We're very
so
privileged here and very like um just I don't know. It's just like we when I was talking to someone, I think about healthcare. Yeah, it was yesterday with my friends about healthcare in New Jersey versus Florida. And I'm like, we are so like lucky to be in this state that we have all
yeah,
these like rights and freedoms or whatever,
yep,
and still be in the same country with like states that don't have the
yeah.
same rights and
And
freedoms.
it's a funny thing because we bitch and complain about how overpopulated New Jersey is and how we deal with all this shit.
But
But
I get
the
it.
reason
I get
why
it.
it is because New Jersey is only so big and
Yeah.
people are coming here because, I mean, kudos to people who move here because they're like aware of the fact that
We're like
that's,
okay over here. As much
yeah,
as
that,
as much as like the rest of the country gives a shit for being from New Jersey,
right.
like
We
I would
maybe
rather live
don't have,
here.
and in all honesty, right? Like if we're not the nicest to you, your state probably
We're
deserves
just,
it. Like, let's be real.
let's just turn into like go
Just
Jersey.
go Jersey moment. But it's true when it comes to political bullshit, there's a lot of like stuff, still going on behind the curtain, but
Hmm.
we might not be the nicest people, but we are representative of the masses of people. We have so many different people here. So at least we have a little bit more of that, trying to live in harmony, even though we all hate each other anyway.
I heard, sorry, before you go on to voter suppression, I heard a quote or I saw a quote on Twitter and TikTok, both places. It was like the East Coast people are not nice, but we're kind, whereas the West Coast people are kind or nice, but not kind. So like
Mm.
over here, like if
Hard
someone has a
exterior, soft center,
yeah, like
soft
if someone's
outside,
having an
hard
issue,
exterior
yeah, if someone's
inside.
having an issue, or like if you see a car like pulled over in your town or whatever, and you're like you're gonna be like, what the fuck is this asshole doing? But then you'll like help them out
We
if like
are
whatever.
The
Whereas like in the
chocolate
West
covered
Coast,
raisins of the world.
yeah, West Coast is like, oh, that sucks, but we'll leave you. Like, it's
Yep.
just like, oh, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
We are the
So,
chocolate covered raisins for our country. Um, so yeah, so going back to this, federally we talk about how like voting is so important and everyone has the right to vote, and that's like on the national level, federal level. But every
mhm,
state, I'm looking at my notes because I wrote down 6,000 notes.
great.
Every state decides how they want to administer their own votes. So every individual state gets to decide what it looks like and if it's actually possible for everybody to vote, regardless of what we say on the federal level that everyone has the right to.
Hmm.
I'm going to repeat that one more time for the people in the back. Nationally in our country, federally in our country, across the board, all the states united, the federal stance is that everyone has the right to vote. But as an individual state, every state can decide what the process of voting looks like and how easy or difficult it is for someone in the state to be able to vote.
Correct. It's kind of like there's a federal minimum wage, whereas the states can dictate something else. So it's like
Right.
that for people that aren't, you know,
And it's
getting
one
that
of the funny
concept.
things that makes America so complicated
Oh, it's so complicated.
because we are
That's why it's so
united.
complicated.
We are united yet separate. Like
Yeah.
we really, so much of the time, this goes back to what you were saying about New Jersey and other states, is that sometimes you cross into another state and it feels like another country. There's
Yeah.
so much difference.
Hmm.
And there's so much fight for those differences to remain. Anyway, but because there are so many different ways that you can suppress votes, and every state gets to creative way to decide what they want to be able to do, it makes it really hard to not only track what is actually happening that falls under actually suppressing votes, but it's extremely difficult to fight it because it happens in so many different and really sneaky ways.
So many
Um,
loopholes. Kind of
there
like
are this.
gerrymandering.
We're gonna get there too.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's on your docket.
that's at the end of this conversation because I
Okay,
learned a
okay.
lot about
Sorry.
how that process works. Anyway, the biggest thing behind all of this that people need to realize, and that it wasn't abundantly clear to me until I got this little like history lesson and was like, oh shit, right, that all happened. Um, okay. So voter suppression is not a thing that it happens by chance. It's not like, oh, well, look at this. Like we decided that we don't want people like this to be able to vote, and like, okay, it's it just so happens that people of color in the state of Alabama like have a really hard time voting. Oh, that's just like so unfair.
Sorry.
Um,
Yeah.
it all is intentionally coordinated by political parties. Like they have meetings and some people who get to office who are Trump,
Jeez.
will
Okay.
have people in their office who will literally sit down and say, if we do not utilize voter suppression, if we do not target people of color, we will not win this election. Like that is an actual tactile discussion that a conversation is happening amongst people that work with these and work for these politicians.
In another
And the
light, in another light, it's like when news outlets are like, oh, if they lose the black vote, they're gonna, win or lose. Or,
correct.
whatever. Like it's just that, but like tone, but like very bluntly saying,
Yeah.
like in those
Like
meetings, it's very blunt.
there's no one ever hiding this as a statement. It's just that they're not going to
Yeah.
say it to the public. That's why all these media outlets will pull it out. The worst part about all of this is that none of this bullshit, like gerrymandering, is actually illegal.
Yeah, isn't it wild? Gerrymandering is like the
So,
craziest concept to me. Sorry, that was like the last thing we we can
so
go
this is
we
okay.
can
So
go
this is
down
why.
your
So
list
let's
first.
go back to this. Voter
Yeah.
suppression is any means, any attempt to try to stop your vote from happening, period, or
Hmm.
counting. There
Hmm.
are multitudes of ways that every state can decide that they want to do this. None of this is illegal. And because of what has happened in our country over the last 10 years, it's worse than it was before. So let's
Hmm.
go back. So remember in a previous episode, we talked about how there are people like monitoring the mail-in ballots, right? And they're like
Yes,
bullying
yeah.
people and all of that. Well, we were both like, oh wait, that's totally legal. Like people can't do that. That's not illegal anymore.
That's wild. That
So
is kind of voter suppression.
let's talk about let's talk about why that is and the history of where like even these polling monitors come from. Because it was so, what blew my mind is that the conversation in the interview where Stacey Abrams was talking, this was happening before all of our elections are happening, right? So she's
Yeah.
forecasting and explaining all of these ways that voter suppression has been happening over the past 2 years before it's actually happening. So that was like a mind-boggling thing for me. But I'm so
Yeah.
happy that she explained all of the, what does that mean? Why is that illegal? Why is it more legal now than it was before?
Right.
So if you think about the way that our political system was structured and the way that everything went with voting rights and the Voting Rights Act specifically, after 1965, with the onset of the Voting Rights Act, white people in power then had to become concerned with the vote of people of color, right? Because it was telling
Yeah.
them that they can vote now, right? And there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it. We have to
Can we just go back to the date of that act? Go ahead and say it again.
1965.
That's not far from today.
Well, yes, okay. And so then with that act happening by the 1980s, political parties, remember, I talked in the beginning about what political party is the one who's usually doing these things. Political parties realize that they can start. I don't have to send somebody of a political standing to stand out in front of these boxes to stop people or scare people off from voting. I can recruit people to be a part of my political cult and have them do it on our behalf.
Right, like a civilian.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that was actually a thing that started in the 1980s and became really popular. But as the push for the Voting Rights Act, and now we're going 20 years, as the push for the Voting Rights Act became more prevalent and people were really starting to fight back and say, like, you can't do any of this stuff anymore, that started to go away. And honestly, in our lifetimes, when we were kids, as we, all through the beginning of the new century, it wasn't as prevalent, right? Because it was frowned upon and people weren't allowing it.
Right.
But this is the thing that I think happened, and I don't think, especially because of the age that we were like in college, that it wasn't right in front of my face to realize what was going on. But in 2013, there were sections of the Voting Rights Act that were manipulated and removed, which openly led to people allowed to push for voter suppression legally again.
Really? Do you know what? I like have like Wikipedia on my phone right now. I'm trying to figure that out.
Not go into the specifics of this.
Okay.
And it was something that in 2008, President Obama was calling attention to, saying that this is going to happen. People are working to make this a thing, and it ended up happening in 2013.
Which is why, like, I guess, yeah, because we were younger and like that was happening. I was like, I don't get it. Like, we
right,
can
and
vote.
It didn't make
it didn't blip.
Right, it didn't make, and I mean, how much more, again, privileged as literally just as citizens in Jersey, right? Where that bullshit wasn't going to become a thing that we were going to necessarily
Obama's
have to...
terms.
Correct. That's true. That's
yes.
Good important point there. So let's talk about what happens post 2013.
Sure.
Organizations like ALEC, and which, if you guys aren't too familiar with that, essentially all of the wealthiest companies in the world come together and try to enact their power over politics. Does that sound right?
Lobbying?
That's lobbying. And then all the gerrymandering, all of that stuff. So we'll get there.
Yeah.
So these organizations gathered and they started an effort to raise $60 million and established armies around the country of poll monitors.
That's so wild. That's so wild.
So all of this action that they're taking is legal again.
Yeah. 2013, right?
2013. Which brings us to present day, where people are allowed to stand at the polls and intimidate people. It's all acts of intimidation. And just to clarify really quickly, I don't mean like fighting, shooting, all that stuff is not legal.
No, it's
the act of just standing there and the act of just sheer intimidation and questioning people and accosting people, like, is all okay.
I think so again, I'm on Wikipedia. I'm not just like ignoring Brittany. People are watching. I'm on Wikipedia
She's going
looking
for
at
more research.
looking at the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and in 2013, which is what we're talking about right now, there's a Shelby County versus Holder court case, and I think this is what happened. I think this is
Okay.
the case that
I
you're
don't know the
talking about.
depths of it, so go for it.
But basically, there's just a little like synopsis saying like it made it harder for ethnic minority voters to vote. Basically, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but like this, I think this is what you're
What
alluding
led to the
to.
bigger part of
Yeah.
things being having to change.
Yes,
Um,
correct. So
so
I'm
the
gonna put my phone down now.
my summarization of all of this is that our most basic right in this country
Quote unquote. Yeah.
is so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because there's also stipulations on like if you're a felon, a past felon,
well,
and you're
this is how purges get passed.
yeah.
If they see that you're a felon and they have concerns about it, they can be like, well, you're a felon for this type of act, and that doesn't suit our political. It's just like it's almost like the way that you get just deselected from as a jury member, like
Oh
they are
yeah.
allowed to
Hmm.
put that level of stipulation onto your friggin'
I
ballot
don't
as a citizen.
I don't know if the older I get, I'm like, I don't know about the bigger cases, how juries work. If that is something that I want as a citizen. That's a whole different,
This is
I think,
another episode we're
podcast
getting into.
episode.
But okay, so and then all of this information baffled me. So our country is founded in democracy, right? When you talk about democracy all over the world, like America's like
The
the
democratic,
country,
yeah.
like
But do we know what
democracy.
democracy means anymore?
Well, okay, so great.
Sorry,
Cool. This
my
is a
like
great question
political
because
science mind
just
is just
looking
like
at
reeling.
just looking at just looking at what we've just talked about with voter suppression, there's no democracy in that.
Yeah, it's already skewed in some way,
Like there's
shape, or
the
form.
definition of what democracy is, and that's kind of I think the future of our country, the next, however many years in our lifetime is really just redefining what the hell democracy is and creating a structure that actually supports that being for the people. But anyway, so Stacey Abrams started talking about
Hmm.
democracy in other countries and how it's almost kind of embarrassing how our most foundational right as voting is the most embarrassing thing compared to other countries in the world. So we are one of the only countries in the world where your right to vote isn't like implicit in your citizenship.
Right, we have
It's
to go
not
register.
implicated with the fact that you're a citizen. You
Right,
need
you
to
have
go
to.
register. So
Yeah.
in Australia, by law, citizens have to vote. Like if you want to not be registered, you have to like literally come up with X, Y millions of
Some
reasons as to why you don't have to vote. Like it is law for you to have to vote. Um,
Australia.
yeah,
Is that
which isn't necessarily democratic, but
also gives you at least your voice is heard,
at
right?
least you have a say, right?
At least you have a say, and you can't have the argument that like, oh, I didn't like, oh, why did this happen? And it's like you didn't vote, like
Right.
like so
Right.
you
Like at least
voted.
you're part of whatever change or not change is happening, right? As and I mean you're as in like community at large. The
Hmm.
people at large
Hmm.
are part of that process.
Right, the
But
collective you.
let's make a comparison here. In America, not only do we have to fight to register to vote in most
Hmm.
cases, you need to fight to stay registered to vote. And then we also have to fight. This is all levels of voter suppression we're fighting against at every level. Then you also have to fight to make sure that your vote actually counts and isn't being purged for whatever bullshit reason politicians decide they want to purge it for. You have to get through three levels of
Layers.
hell
Yeah, yeah.
to actually have your vote counted. And this is why
Well,
people that
yeah.
that passive feeling about it stands the way it stands.
There's also a fourth level of hell, which is we don't have off for election day.
I'm so happy you brought that up. So let's go back to, because that's the next thing. Let's go back to what you said about how even employed people, even like
Hmm.
upper middle class employed people are still targeted for voter suppression because we are one of the only countries, again, that isn't voting on a weekend or a deemed
Like the national
national
holiday.
holiday. We vote
Yeah,
on a freaking Tuesday between 9 and 5 p.m. when
yeah.
majority of our country is working.
Oh, I was supposed to say,
And
do I have my ballot in front of me? Like I have the,
let's
the
talk for one
sample one.
second, friends. If we wanted to change the structure of our democracy in the country, one simple step to be able to do that is to change the day we vote.
Yeah, or give us the day off.
Right.
Which I think, and I was looking for my ballot here because I think the polls here in Jersey, or at least I don't know if this, I guess it's by state, it's not by county, but it's like 8 to 6, which again isn't like, or like 8 to a later whatever, but like it's still
But then
not the
you,
whole day because it's like you
right.
have
And
people
then you
that work
include traffic
earlier.
and you're not getting there.
Yeah, you're still screwed. Or like I'm going during my lunch hour. Like I'm just like, okay, so like I mean, which is fine because I want to vote, but other people don't want to like take their lunch and go vote and then go back to,
Especially because, I
also,
mean, a lot of people are doing that and you stand in line for the whole time. And you have to you're making a larger than necessary sacrifice on yourself because
which
people are
shouldn't be a
trying to
sacrifice.
suppress
Like
you
this
from
is like
voting.
right, like this is a
Let's talk
very
about all the
simple.
reasons why you turn off, especially young people, especially young educated people from wanting to be a part of this. Because when you become educated about it, you see how much fucking bullshit there is. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to opt out. And I know I have sympathy for that. Do I think it's the right answer? No. But
Hmm.
I have sympathy for why people feel this way because look at the Goliath you're standing up against. And even when we fight to say, to tell the powers that be, like, you need to change the day that we vote, they literally just look down at us and go, oh, you can't vote? Oh, okay. Like, that's great because that means our plan is working the way we want it to. It's
It's so wild.
redonkulous.
So,
Redonkulous.
this is like kudos to, so obviously I'm a basketball fan. I don't know if I've probably said this before, but the NBA, and I mean, I guess good for them because this is the only thing they can really do is not show like they they don't have games on election day. So no, there's no excuse of like, oh, I'm staying home because I'm watching a game. Like stuff like that. I'm like, I guess that's like one way to like get your viewers to go vote because
At
there's
least
no games.
you're trying to create as little friction of getting in their way as possible,
Yeah,
right?
it's just
Which
like,
is,
okay, the players that you follow aren't playing. There's nothing going on in the NBA. If that's like your sport, I guess like
I mean,
that's
I
like a
guess
stance
that
that they're taking.
could be a whole that like you're anti-suppression, right? Like that would be the act of how you
Yeah. Right,
act
like
in
that's
an
like a little
anti-suppressive way.
thing. Like that's a little thing that a corporation can do is like, okay, let's
And
like
that's the
not
big thing that
do
we have to go back
anything.
to. What stops us from being able to be like, okay, we're gonna have a national election day, and on this day, no business is conducted. Friends, the corporate greed is what's stopping that from happening.
That's literally just
Like,
capitalism.
I just that's why
It's
this
one
doesn't
day.
happen
It's like one
because they
day,
don't want you to take off one day to ha enact your right to your freedom of
Yeah.
voting.
Yeah.
It's it really sometimes it feels like I'm running on a hamster wheel, but I'm running forward and somehow the wheel is going backwards.
Right, like there's no progress.
And this is why we get stuck where we get stuck, and this is why we have the constant like blocking just deadlock in what goes on with our politics because one step forward is seven steps back. But thank God we have wonderful and intelligent and very active people like Stacey Abrams and I don't remember what the foundation's called. It's called Fight something, um,
Hmm.
who are way more intelligent and educated and knowledgeable about this area than Maria and I are, and are actually trying to
Yeah.
do something at a political level to help contradict all of this bullshit that's going on. Bullshit like gerrymandering. Um, Go ahead, explain what gerrymandering is, because I'm gonna butcher
Oh,
this one.
um, in very simple terms, I guess, and my
Because it
political
gets way too
science,
complex.
my political science expertise is far gone because I'm not in college anymore. But very simple terms is that each district in each county or each, states, whatever, can get redrawn. That is gerrymandering, and that in itself, depending on like the way that the population is in each district of each county. Obviously, some districts vote more Democratic than Republican. And as a whole, obviously the state can be a blue or red state, but like obviously individual houses can be different. And the way that I guess the political parties view it is that if we redraw districts in certain ways, we can get more red votes or more blue votes, and that's legal.
And here's the fun thing that I learned about this. So, what the way that gerrymandering works is it tries to organize the people by political party, right? Like it's like we're going to
Mhm.
organize and we're going to go this way so that we get all of the
Yeah.
the Democrats in this bubble and all the Republicans in this bubble. And from listening to her Stacey Abrams interview, the way that gerrymandering and the way that redrawing happens and the way that they're able to make these choices because they're looking at the people that live within the areas. And the way that you know what people live in what areas is from what the information that's gathered in the census.
Yes, fill out your census. That's also
So
a thing.
let's talk about, I don't even know what there's no name for this, but if we're going to call voter suppression, I'm going to call this just census suppression. So I remember when we were younger, there was a lot of crap around the census about like the importance of a census and people trying to tell people that they didn't need to complete the census because it didn't matter and didn't mean anything and all of I
I
remember
hate
like
that.
I remember hearing all of this.
I hate that. Yeah.
Well, here's why. Here's why all of this was happening. And I didn't know any of this was possible, and it's disgusting when you think about that this is also still legal. Gerrymandering is still legal. Take a community of Republicans, right, where you're mostly dealing with people who are white. And in surrounding neighborhoods, let's say we have a neighborhood that's black, neighborhood of like Latinx community, and then you have these white people in the center. So we've got black people, white people,
Hmm.
Latino people. If here's what would happen, especially during the height of the time that I'm thinking of when people were trying to really
Yeah.
just stop people from filling out the census.
Hmm.
If you have all of the white people in the center and they're all filling out the census, one white man's going to go next door to the black community and say, if you're black and you fill out the census, we're going to know if you've been arrested. We're going to know where your children are. You're going to have to start paying alimony. You're going to have to start paying money back in taxes. We're going to use money to scare the shit out of you.
Mm.
Then he nicely walks back through his little white community to head over to the Latinx community. Let's say they're immigrants. Let's say they're
Yeah.
not even Latinx. Let's say they're from Mexico. So I can be super specific in this, right?
Yeah.
They're
Jesus. Yeah.
Mexican immigrants. And they walk over there and they go, if you fill out the census, then we're going to know that you're an illegal immigrant and we're going to get to send you back to Mexico. So you probably shouldn't fill out the census either. So then he goes back to his house in his little white community, and now he's stopped people of color who are black and he's stopped people of color who are Mexican from filling out the census because he scared the shit out of them. So when they go to look at who lives in the area, they don't have information on the neighborhood to the right or to the left of them. So they're just going to bloat out the information about his white town to both surrounding towns so that on the national census, it looks like those are all white people.
And to take that a step further outside of voting, filling out the census and taking your example too, that's less resources for those
Correct.
those people of color
Because they
communities.
don't need them because they're getting grouped in with the white community that's in the center.
So like filling out the census is also very important because it is for the resources for those communities, and also
Correct.
there's also a push for, and this is just the AAPI community, like not just Asian on the census. You know how it's
Like
it's
more specific breakdown.
correct, because yes, sure, Asian, but in each demographic, we need more resources for each, certain
Right.
type of Asian, certain type of,
Yeah, and those resources are going to
Latinx
need to
and-
differ depending
right.
on
So
background.
filling
for
out your
sure.
census is very important
And
too.
this
Every 10 years.
is another
Well,
really great place to point out that when we get frustrated about why people of color are not getting the resources they need, it's because on a map, right, in the fine print, you look white because
Yeah.
you've been scared out of filling out this information. And just to touch back real quick on all of the stuff that I said as examples, that shit doesn't happen if you fill out your census. Your census is not used for any of that. Your census is used to know who are you? Where are you located? And like, what is your political standing? Like, that's what your
And like,
census
do we
is
need
used for.
resources in those
No one
areas?
is
Yeah.
sending that to the IRS. No one's sending like it's not being cross-referenced by all the departments of the country. They're doing enough shit as it
As
is.
they all
Like
are. Yeah.
it's just being used to understand who the people are in the community so that any funding or any type of resources that are needed can go there. And the way
Yep.
that the structure is happening of where political parties land it is being
Hmm.
defined by that. So if you're looking at your friggin' map with your party on it and you're like, well, I live here and 90% of our community is people of color, but we have this 10% of white people here and all of a sudden we're Republican. This is why.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is where political
100%.
parties can draw power. And I did not know that that happened with the census. So now I'm gonna double down on not that like
Oh,
my I'm a white person, so what but like
but even
I'm
so,
gonna
you
double
have.
down on
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm gonna double down on talking about how much like
Yes. Correct.
filling out the census needs
It's
to be
important.
done.
It's important and important to like fill it out right.
Right. That is
Like
also correct. Just like
like
your voting ballots, it's important to fill them out right so that
yes,
they're
because
not errored.
another voter suppression is like if you fuck up one thing on your ballot, you're fucked. That's
They
it.
can get
You're done.
purged for
Like
any
purged.
reason. Yeah. And it's
Yep.
so and I think this, knowing all of this is gonna make me so much more, I don't, maybe forgiving isn't the word, but when shit goes wrong, this is all of the shit we're working against. Like
Yeah.
you are trying to, have you ever had a bunny rabbit? Do you guys ever have a rabbit?
No.
I don't know why this is the analogy that came to me, but like if you let them out and let them run around the house, they literally like hop around the house and shit while they're hopping. Like their little pellets come out, and it's like
Mm.
this is our government is the rabbit. And
Okay.
you as the individual, just as you pick up one piece of poop and you're like, okay, let's keep moving forward, they are pooping along the
As
way.
they
Like we are dealing with shit. And not only that, you've got hundreds of years of shit trail behind you, and then they're
Yeah.
still moving forward and just shit storms.
That's so
So
funny.
I get like this explains so much and enrages me because it's bullshit that it's all happening and it's legal. And it
Hmm.
enrages me because this is education that we don't get unless it's sought out or like
Which
depending on it's not equally given to everybody,
right, the education.
which is part of the
The
problem.
lack of education is what is the part of the problem.
Don't teach children about the grumpy, wrinkly white motherfuckers who've led this country in a
Yeah.
perspective that is so
Skewed.
white supremacist,
Yeah.
skewed to the white supremacists. Teach us about how our fucking government actually functions and the true bullshit that happens. As devastating and disgusting as it is, the beautiful part about this country is that there's hope for us to actually do something about it, but no one can do anything about it if we're not educated to know that it's even there.
If you're privileged enough to go to college, right?
Mhm.
I go seek out those poli sci classes because I my minor in poli sci has taught me so much just as an individual
For real.
that
Yeah.
like and this is why I can be at least somewhat confident whenever I talk about voting, gerrymandering, and like these random like little tidbits because I had that very minor,
Yeah.
basic foundation of knowledge that we should have had when we were going to school, like
And
in through, K through 12.
I now as an adult am and it's interesting as somebody who's so interested in science, now that I see political science as what it actually is, I'm
It's
so
so,
interested in it. And
dude,
history in itself, I'm
it was
so
so
interested in it.
entertaining, I guess, because it was just so it was like very encapsulating and just like enthralling to like just
Oh
listen
yeah.
to.
It's like taking a magnifying glass and like looking at what's going on underneath the surface. But
Oh, it was
it
great. Yeah, I miss
enrages
those classes.
me. It enrages me that we didn't get access to the real information that we should have gotten growing up. That I didn't We turn 18 and have the choice to start registering to vote. And I mean, again, this is an exact example of how voter suppression is even working in the educational system. But we are signing up as 18-year-olds ready to vote.
Hmm.
and have no idea what the
What
fuck
that
is
even
going
means.
on and
Yeah,
what
what
that
that even
even
means.
means.
Yeah.
And this is
Especially like
why
the
so many,
questions, you know how like there's questions on like,
oh
it's like
yeah, like the
obviously like
backside.
here, yeah, here are all the people that you're voting for. Great. And then the questions afterwards, and you're like, what are these questions? Yes or no? What do you mean? And then you have to
Right,
like read
right.
through this like
And
font
it's like
size two.
major, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like major decisions that are going to happen. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember when they asked about like marijuana.
Yes. Major things. Yes.
Like
Hmm.
these are big things. And I'm mad that we were robbed from getting true education,
Hmm.
like about all of this information when we hit the age to be able to register. And this is why there's so much youth. And I will say this again, I remember it being a really big thing around our like generation with so much bullshit had been set into so many people that was passed on to us. And we were, as a
Hmm.
generation, I remember everyone being extremely passive about all of it. And
Yeah.
it, this is voter suppression done right. Like people were thrilled that we didn't care and that we didn't want to have anything to do with it because so many of us were given a sleeping potion without realizing that it was being administered. And
Hmm.
I just,
You also think that the lack of media, like commercials, I mean. You know how there's commercials during presidential elections, but not commercials for congressional as much? Like
because of the
that also
money.
is suppressing people from like, oh, there's an election coming up.
And I mean, it's true. I mean, we're suppressed from access about things, period.
Yeah.
Like, why is it? And I remember when you do a lot of your vo local election things, a lot of the local level questions about things that should get passed or not in districts are on there. And
Hmm.
why am I not, why is the local news talking bullshit about something that happened at the grocery store and for the weeks leading up, but I don't know that there's something that I have to answer a question on until I get my mail-in ballot.
Until you get your sample or
You know what
whatever.
I mean?
Exactly.
And
Yeah, yeah,
that's one of the biggest reasons why I am so insanely grateful that mail-in ballots and sample ballots are an active thing, even though I will tell you this. Remember how I told you I filled in my mail-in ballot? I
yeah.
got my sample ballot like 4 days later.
Isn't that
That
like,
was asinine.
yeah? Because when you were talking about how you got your mail in, I was like, I don't even have my sample. Like,
Oh no, I
I
got
don't
my
know
mail-in
what.
after I got my sample after I mailed out my mail-in. But
Yeah,
I'm really
the sample
grateful
ballots
that
are very, yeah, they're very like educational on what
it's
you're
helpful to
looking
know
like.
what, right. But I'm so grateful that that is a thing that, especially in our state, we have access to, and that there is minimal suppression around what happens with you being able to get your ballot and cast your ballot, and whatever happens with it counting, you have no control over. But I'm happy that
Hmm.
those two areas, the gates are pretty well,
Yeah, you
accessible
you know what you're looking at when you get there.
because if I still had to go vote in person and do the little clickety clickety thing on the
It's
machine,
electronic now.
oh
Or
well,
like it's more like the screen is more sorry. Like I voted. I always vote in person,
but imagine
but yeah,
showing up to that moment,
with
not being
no
able to
idea.
do anything to read. And I remember the first couple times that I voted for something, we were
Hmm.
18 and I was still voting in person for
We
those
were
first
so
couple of
excited. I feel
years.
like we were so excited because it was the Obama
But it
years.
was right, and it was us. But like
Hmm.
I remember walking into those booths and there were those questions, and I remember never having even seen that question or
Correct.
knowing that it
Yeah.
was going to be on the ballot and being
Yes.
like, what the fuck? So I'm so grateful now that we get the mail-in ballots and we get the sample
Hmm.
ballots because I can do my due diligence to do the research about the topic and make an
Yeah,
educated decision.
you can at least do the research even on the people, even if you've never seen these people until
Oh,
your
that's what
mail-in
I
or
do.
your sample mail-in ballot comes in. At least now, between now and election day, you can do your research and be like, oh, okay, make an educated, decision.
And I think I saw some local news networks will do like write-up articles about the people
Hmm.
who are like for the Board of Education in my district, there was an article that like talked a lot about who the people were
Oh,
and what
good.
their stances were and what their background was. I feel like on a national level, we need some type of like database for that.
Okay.
You know
Like
what I'm saying?
like for national elections or just like for each state, here's
For
what's happening.
all elections. I
Oh,
feel like
well.
on a national, like I don't know
Yeah.
how this would work and the funding of it would be blah blah blah. But even if
Funding
it
is
just
always
worked,
the
even if it was
devil.
just on, say it just started in our state level, because again, we're talking voter suppression. A big part of voter suppression is making sure that you stay in the dark and you have no idea who the people are, what the fuck is going on. So the likelihood of it happening in every state is very minimal. But I remember when the last time we were voting for, I don't know if it was it might have been governor. Their funding behind the candidates, they had a lot of websites. Like I remember being able to go on their websites. And I mean, it's very like, obviously they put whatever they want you to see on it. So you have to read it, take everything with a grain of salt, but you at least have access to access their information, their policies and their stances and things that they want to enact. And that's extremely helpful. But imagine if we had at like a state level, a state database that really gave you this information to be able to say, these are people's, these are their policies.
Here's a township of your whatever. These are their stances. And that'd be cool.
It would be, and this isn't a fantasy world, because if this really happened, that someone would pay somebody else to make sure that certain things were said or not said, and it would become a whole war. But it would just like,
it would be easier access, obviously.
Right. It would be an act of anti-voter suppression.
Because then at least like, okay, we have this database that people may or may not use, but at least it's there. You can go and see what you voted for, like what their stances were and what's happening, or like what, whoever's in office right now, like, and their stances are like, there's no way I'm voting for them next time.
Right.
But it's so hard to get that information all in one go.
And it's stupidly hard. It's for
like
something
the amount of research that we have to do as a citizen just to like figure out like what you're voting,
fact that
who you're voting for.
90% of the information that we're getting is coming from, and this is the part that's bullshit too, right? 90% of the information that we outright get front facing of these people comes from fucking media distributors that like, it's bullshit anyway. You're not getting, I gotta plug my computer in. Wait. Oh my God, I gotta go fast. Okay, wait. Like it's so stupid.
Oh my God. Hurry up. Okay, and we're back.
For anybody who doesn't regularly struggle with anxiety, if you want to know what it feels like to literally have clinical anxiety, it is that moment of your life when your computer goes, your battery's running low, and then the little thing in the corner flashes the like attention symbol at you, like
please plug this in.
The world is gonna end.
While you're recording a podcast,
you realize that has happened, and you plug in the computer, and you know that it's not gonna die. That is what it's like to live your life with anxiety.
That's pretty much the analogy.
Anyway, but it's just, I think I'm very grateful that over the year, it's been a decade since we've been, we were both registered to vote initially. And I'm very grateful that we live in a country where there are so many freedoms that we are able to get access to information, and we get access to more and more information as the elections go by or as the years go by.
Right.
But just like in 2000 and in 2008 and 2013, when the people and the powers that be were like, we don't have to worry about voters, the Voting Right Act anymore because racism is dead. We have a black president.
Wild. Jesus.
We can't fall to that, I guess, like gullibility in thinking that everything is hunky-dory with the way that voting happens in this country. So we need to continue to educate ourselves and call bullshit on the fucking bullshit that's happening.
And if you're voting today, and if it's like close to polls closing, just stay in line. If you're there, they're not going to
they can't turn you away. Yeah, they won't.
I know that's like said like multiple times in the media, but like just a reminder, like if you're there and it's like 5:59 and the polls close at 6 and you get there at 5:59 and there's a line, just stay on there. Like put your vote through.
If you are somebody who ever feels like there is somebody trying to intimidate you or turn you away from voting, remember, if you get that little weird feeling in the back of your head like something feels off here, you still have rights.
You still have rights.
They are trying, remember, they are afraid of you. you hold all the power in that moment and
Yeah.
they are afraid of you. So go about your business and stand your ground, because at the end of the day, if something does go forward where people act illegally towards our country, like, I don't know, like invading the fucking capital of the country, like, something like that, there is consequence to
There
actual
are,
illegal action. Intimidation is not illegal, and they pull it out wherever way that they can. But any violence or treachery against the state is still
is
legal
illegal.
and illegal, and you have rights.
And there are trials for those people that were at the Capitol that day. So it's not, even though it's not a media spectacle anymore, people are getting pulled
There
for
are
trials.
consequences.
Yeah, like
And
things are happening.
the consequences to you not enacting your right to vote might not be as immediate as, the circus of negativity that happens around whatever the other person does, but those consequences will come and they will not sit comfortably.
Yeah.
Those jeans will not fit you. So just stand by your right to be able to do what you fight for as a citizen. And hopefully one day we won't have to fight for it.
And again, my whole argument every time we talk about voting is that your locals are much more important than the presidential one. That is literally my stance when it comes to voting.
Yeah, you can't build
Because
your snowman without having the
yeah,
bottom
your
two row.
foundation,
You
yeah,
don't get ahead unless his body's there.
your foundation is your local and your state. The national, yes, like you can, I will give people the argument like, oh, my vote doesn't count when it comes to national because I get it. That makes sense because it's
Yeah,
within
thousands of
de
degrees of separation.
depending on your state, because that gets into a whole different counting system, the electoral college. That I get it. Presidential, I get it. But the fact that we aren't focusing your congressional and local, that's where they get you. That's where you see these
I mean, we
congressmen that are
just talked
80
about
years
this,
old.
right? We make
Yeah.
these federal national declarations, but the
Yeah.
states still get to choose whatever they want to do. So, which is really
Vote
more
for your
important?
state.
Yeah.
Yeah, vote for your state, which is why we're in such a, 50 different countries in one
Because then
country.
whoever you choose to have leading your state is the person who has the right to turn around and fight whoever's leading the country. So, or,
Yeah.
stand in support of whoever's leading the country. So that
Go
is the
vote
place where your
for your
energy needs to
Congress
go.
people. Go vote for the younger ones typically, because like I can't stand seeing like the average age of congressman be like 70 years old.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Which is why, again, not from New York, but AOC gets all the slack because she's younger from all these older congressmen and senators because
Yeah.
she's younger and she is the change that we need to see. Her being vocal on social media, I would rather see that. Governor Murphy does it really well, actually. He's all on social media.
Yeah.
He's
I mean,
always
he
like
has a
saying
lot of
like
people that are
XYZ.
within his arm's length that are younger. Like he
Right.
surrounds himself with people who are younger.
Again, the first lady's policy director is literally our friend.
Yeah.
She's literally our age. She's giving the first lady and like her staff are like giving her what the people need
Right.
to hear and to,
Yeah.
so go vote today, people. We're changing the scheduling of upload for you guys to hear this today.
Yeah.
So,
Oy vey. All right. Well, that was our little 99-cent lesson on voter suppression and the
and Stacey
structure of
Abrams, God's work.
democracy. Yeah, really, the structure of democracy in our country and what it really means and the work that still needs to be done to redefine it.
And if you're listening to this at a later date other than November 8th after election day, go figure out when the next election is.
Be proactive.
Be proactive and figure out when that is, and or even just like look up who's already elected.
And if you like them or not, and if you choose to choose them for another term, that
Yeah,
counts
exactly.
for something too.
That's literally, yeah. That's your due diligence if you find this at a later date.
Cool
Okay.
beans. You know what I
Hopefully in the
wanted to
future.
say
What?
before? I wanted to say before I got into the whole thing about how angry I was yesterday, how much I'm absolutely loving this time of year and seeing all the trees and all the beautiful like leaves all over the
same.
ground.
Yeah, the fall.
Before we get to freaking Christmas, let's finish the fall, Maria.
I mean, yes, look, again, I'm Filipino. Christmas starts in September.
Guys who are not able to see Maria, she's got a Christmas tree behind her.
Yes, I
I'm still
actually
trying.
I showed Brittany a cool thing. I'm actually just do it now for the video.
Go for it. Go for it. Can that be how we end? Can you just say bye after?
Oh yeah. Do you have
Happy
anything else before
holidays,
we end?
everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays. So I have a thing from Target. Target is like the devil, honestly, but I'm gonna flip this switch, and if you're watching, you look at my Christmas tree. Watch it not work
Watch
when
it
I need it
not
to work.
work.
Come on! Hold on.
I'm dead.
It's not working. See, this might be this is
this is because I'm a dick and I ruined the spirit of Christmas. That's why.
You really like were the Grinch right now. I'm gonna try it again. If it doesn't work, then I'm scared. Oh, there it is.
There we
It
go.
worked the second time.
Oh,
Okay.
man.
Well, thanks, Target.
Happy
Not
holidays,
sponsored.
everybody. Happy voting.
Happy voting. Bye, guys.